Okay, brilliant. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the PPF Football Show. And hopefully, everyone's had is going to have a good Easter. Obviously, students in Maynooth um, are off now for the week, and hopefully, everyone enjoys their break and gets at least a little bit of rest and eats a lot of sweets. But anyway, I'm going to on this show today. I'm going to talk to you about Freddy Adu. Now, for those who might have played Football Manager, like when you were really young, you might have remembered him as a Football Manager wonder kid. But of course, we all remember Freddy Adu as well. I guess a wonder kid, and just the next American Messiah, essentially, and essentially turned out to nothing. So this is his story. So it all started. Well, not all. Not well. He came to. Okay, so basically, sorry, now let me get my words straight. So basically, one of the main reasons why Freddie Adu came into the spotlight for a lot of us was when on in the 2004 MLS Super Draft, he was drafted by DC United at the age of 14. Now that is mad, considering that most college people say about in their 20s anyway. So to be drafted in at 14 was, unprecedented at the time, and it still is. So the Ghana-born attacking midfielder had moved to the US in 1997 and swiftly became the great hope of American soccer. Comparisons to Pele soon followed, but Adu failed to live up to the immeasurable hype, playing for 15 clubs in 9 different countries. So, yeah, essentially, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the highs and lows of the career of Freddy Adu. Even prior to signing for DC, Adu and his family had already turned down an approach from Inter after shining in a youth tournament held in Italy at the age of just 12. So, it wasn't just people in America who thought he was the next big thing. He had some interest in Europe as well. And according to Piero Ausilio, who is the head of Inter's youth sector, he told the Washington Post, "We had never done this before. Freddie was the first American player that we have ever seen with the potential as a pro in European soccer. Simply, he's a great talented player with great physical tools and a wonderful technique." Come 2004, Adu simultaneously became the youngest American ever to sign a major league professional contract in any team sport, and the highest paid player in the MLS when he joined DC United as the number 1 pick in the MLS Super Draft. And this is mad because he was still 14 at the time. And I don't know what you were doing when you were 14. But when I was 14, obviously I was going into secondary school first year, and I would have been in no way prepared for what would be to come with all the fame and expectation that would be, being the number 1 draft pick in the MLS Super Draft. And moving on a little bit, and Adu became the youngest player to ever appear in United States professional sports, like in any sport, when he came off the bench against the San Jose Earthquakes in April 2004. Sorry if I mentioned that earlier, just making sure. And later in the month, he scored in the defeat against the Metro Stars, now known as the New York Red Bulls, where to become the youngest goal scorer in MLS history. And I doubt that record is going to be broken anytime soon. And by the end of his first season, he had made 30 appearances for DC United as they went on to the MLS Cup, and they actually won the MLS Cup that year, which is obviously great for DC United. And he scored 5 goals and provided 3 assists in the process. So he's not exactly ripping the world apart, but he's 14. Like, come on, you have to have a bit of lower expectations on him, but sure. And in the following season, however, he began to publicly vent his frustration at a lack of starting appearances, which he suggested cost him a place in the USA squad for the 2006 World Cup. Now, some people would say, right, that this might be a sign of his ego, because, like, realistically, who's going to be called up to the USA squad in 2006 at the age of 14? Or even, he was 16. I know the US were probably desperate, but I don't think they were that desperate to get a 16-year-old, but I might be wrong. And Adu said of the situation, I always have to make the best decision for myself first. And I'm just looking into things right now. So we'll see what happens at the end of the season, and we'll see where my family and myself are headed. And after this deliberation, he would train at Man United in 2006 on a 2-week trial. So obviously, Alex Ferguson could have a look at the player ahead of a potential move when he turned 18. And Ferguson said that he did all right. He said that he was a talented boy and that he'd go back to the US and that they'll keep an eye on him essentially. And essentially, all that Ferguson did was to try and give Adu an idea of what United was like, so he could see the place and how comfortable he was with it. However, due to work permit restrictions, Adu was unable to appear for the Red Devils, obviously, but his pedigree was there for all to see. Earlier that year, he had become the youngest ever US international when he had been selected in the MLS All-Star team twice, while he had been also in the MLS All-Star team twice, and was nominated for the FIFA Pro Young Player of the Year in 2005. However, after a number of clashes with DC United coach Peter Novak, Adu left the club to join Real Salt Lake in 2007, but lasted less than a year with his new team. An impressive showing at the Under-20s World Cup, where he captained the US and became the only player to appear in 3 Under-20 World Cups, led to a $2 million transfer to Benfica. And it could have hardly been more turbulent as Benfica went through 3 managers in Adu's first 6 months at the club. And after initially featuring under the first 2 coaches, he fell out of favour and made just 21 appearances for the club. Leon moves to Monaco, Belenenses, Aris Thessaloniki, and Kaikor Rizespor swiftly followed. But it is telling that all 4 spells ended prematurely. The move to Rizespor did at least earn Adu a recall to the US national team, with Bob Bradley impressed by the player's determination to obviously move to a Turkish second division team in order to play first team football. After being unused through the majority of the 2011 Gold Cup, Adu made a surprise substitute appearance in the semi-final and final, impressing on both, but unable to stop the US losing 4-2 to Mexico in the final. And a return to the MLS followed in 2011 with the Philadelphia Union, reunited with the tough love of Novak, his former coach at DC United, and Adu was adamant that his experience in Europe had been a positive one. 10 years from when he first made the headlines, it was still hard to forget that he was 22 when he made the move to Philadelphia Union, because it's just mad to think that he was in the game that long. Well, if you think about it, he was in the game since he was 14. And Adu stated that by the age of 25, he wanted to be playing in England or Spain, and not just to be playing, but be a regular starter for the team. And he was 22 when he said it, so he gave himself a 3-year window to achieve it. Although, unfortunately for Adu, his career went down a familiar path. He failed to perform to the expected standard at the Union. Novak was eventually sacked, and new boss, John Hackworth, was less than impressed by the player. And he said, with me not performing, and Adu said of the situation, with me not performing to the level expected of someone making designated player money in Philly, coupled with the fact that I had to be that the fact that I had young guys looking up to me on the team, maybe, according to Hackworth, he wasn't setting a good enough example for the young guys on the team, Adu told Goal online sports publication. Looking back on it, he was right. I can't even be mad at Hackworth for pushing me out of Philadelphia. At the end of the day, you just have to take some responsibility yourself. You have to put yourself in the best situation to succeed, on the field or off the field. And at that time, I wasn't performing great on the field or off the field. A disastrous move to Brazilian outfit Bahia saw Adu once again play under 3 different coaches in a season, which led to his subsequent release in 2013. And 8 years after training with Manchester United, he found himself on trial at Blackpool, Stabæk in Sweden, and AZ Alkmaar, failing to earn a deal at each. Adu eventually found a new club by signing with Serbian side FK Jagodina, but only lasted 6 months. And likewise, a spell at Kuopion Palloseura in Finland only lasted 3 months. And he would return to the US for the second time in 2015, signing for the Tampa Bay Rowdies in the NSL. And he spent 18 months at that club, but he failed to make much of an impression. Further trials at the Portland Timbers and Polish side Sandesia Noe Sachs. Forgive me for the terrible pronunciation of that, but I'm not Polish. So, against the wishes of the manager, Radoslaw Murskowski, who labelled the opportunity a joke, failed to materialise in permanent contracts. So, he was clearly struggling to get any sort of stability. And at the end of the 2018 USL Championship season, Adu was released by the Las Vegas Lights and spent the following 2 years without a club. Speaking to the Washington Post in October 2018, while visiting the RFK Stadium, Adu said, "I can't believe it. It just flies, man. It flies. I was 14, 15 when I came here. I'm 28 now." So he was just kind of, time really flew for him, and he was just like, at the end of it, he wasn't really anywhere. It's just weird. It went fast. Now I understand people were like when he signed, people were like, "Don't take it for granted. It goes by quick." And he definitely experienced that. And in October 2020, Adu returned to the professional ranks with Swedish third-tier side Österlen FF. At 31, he was hardly old, but after 2 years working as a youth coach back in Maryland, there was questions of whether he could actually get back to the required physical level. And the answer to this question was an emphatic no. And on February the 16th, 2021, Österlen Vice Chairman Philip Lindgren announced Adu's departure from the club, and this is what he said: "We had an agreement with him that he would have the chance to show himself, but for what we have seen, we have had a hard time they found that he was incredibly unfit and not really being able to compete. He has a lot of football in him, but the physical and the mental are missing. He was clearly disappointed. He's a really nice guy in every way, and I'm convinced that he would have been a great football player, but he lacks the physicality required. We're actually a little bit surprised at how unprepared he was when he came here." So, and that's where we find ourselves now with Freddy Adu. He hasn't really made much of a career for himself, whether that be his fault or possibly the expectation placed on him from an early age, because he was signing endorsement deals at 14 and 15, and maybe his head got too big. But it's a really interesting case and a really good case study to show that you shouldn't it's not really good to have all this pressure applied on you when you're so young, and maybe it's not the best thing to do. Maybe you should usher these people away. You should usher these players away from the spotlight, because it'll help them develop more, and hopefully, they'll actually flourish, maybe, possibly. But that was the story of Freddy Adu. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will be back next week because I'm not lazy. So hopefully you enjoyed the show, and don't forget to listen to the rest of the shows on Mars FM this week. And I'll see you all, and hopefully you have a good Easter. Goodbye, everyone.